Hey everybody, welcome back into the Horseshoe. The sun is going down. It has fully set on Ohio State against Michigan for the second consecutive year. The Buckeyes have come up short in the game. They will not win the Big Ten East Division. And if they have a chance to go to the playoff, it is no longer up to them. Frankly, it's hard to sit here and imagine that the Buckeyes deserve a shot at that after losing 45-23 in here on Saturday afternoon to close the regular season at 11-1. And for the second consecutive year, they have to look back and wonder, there was so much conversation. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, and I'm Austin Ward. As we look back and compare, competitive stamina, toughness. How far away was Ohio State a year ago? And then how much further away are they right now? That, I think, is the question, because this loss certainly feels a lot worse for Ohio State than even the one a year ago that snapped the streak.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would have, circled lose by more at home when you're winning at halftime in the odds book. But it's a simple matter of Ohio State came out and they both said it. CJ Stroud said it after the game. They laid an egg in the second half. They stopped playing good offense. They stopped doing anything on defense that was working in the first half. Michigan, to their credit, continued to just do what they do, and they kept pounding the rock, and eventually Ohio State's defense wore down. J.J. McCarthy, I think, only threw 5 passes in the second half, much similar to what they did a year ago. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a situation where they, had to rely on him in the second half after the first drive. And, you can pinpoint a number of moments in this game where things just changed. Ohio State should have been winning this game 28-10 at halftime, or 28-7, 28-3 maybe.
Yep.
But to me, the biggest play of the game is the G. Scott personal foul penalty that I just don't understand why it happened. That sets you back. You get the ball there, you're down 4 points at midfield, 1st and 10 from midfield with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter, and you end up having 1st and 35. And then the subsequent decision by Ryan Day to not go for it on that 4th and 5, which I don't personally have a problem with. I have concerns about maybe the play call on the 4th and 2 in the first half, as when you were running the ball for 8 yards of carry at that point.
To throw to Stover?
Yeah.
Which is a good, the play was...
He was open.
He was open. Yeah. It was just probably the worst throw of the day by CJ Stroud. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it didn't get reeled in. But there are dozens of moments throughout this game where you can just pick and choose to say, hey, this was to me, it's just a game of missed opportunities.
Yeah, I think that you can name a number of those, especially in the first half. There were times... think back over the course of the year, why is Ohio State running these wide receiver screens? Well, they had one perfectly blocked up for Emeka Egbuka, and he drops it. I think that happened, about 10 times where you go through the course of this game. Marvin Harrison had his first drop of the year. You look at CJ Stroud, a very emotional one in the postgame, saying he felt like he needed to do more. The people around him did CJ Stroud a disservice, in my estimation, today. And I think that starts with Ryan Day, and he said that up there. There's nowhere else to start. He's the head coach of this program, and 3 points in the second half when they have a clear talent advantage and ability to move the football on Michigan and they can't do it. I don't think I'll ever comprehend that.
I think they're not a very well-coached football team, and the dynamic in this game has changed. Michigan beat them last year. They are no longer afraid of Ohio State. Ohio State can show up here and frankly play the way that they played today and beat everybody else in the Big Ten because they see that silver helmet and that means something to them. Michigan doesn't get scared of it anymore. Now this game becomes about focus and execution and discipline and having a feel for the game, and all of that was lacking for Ohio State. I agree with Berm. They should have been up big. I wrote on the board on Rivals.com when Austin and I were talking, but they needed to put Michigan away in the first half. And I think I said earlier in the week, if they let Michigan hang around at halftime, that's trouble for them because Michigan's been a pretty good second half team this year. That's kind of how they've lived. They've been clunky and sort of out of sorts in the first half, but they figured it out in the second half, and they did it again today. I mean, 28-3 in the second half is just... it's inexcusable. You can point in a million different directions for why it happened, but I think it comes back to it's not a very well-coached, disciplined football team, Ohio State.
The discipline, to me, is the issue. Again, we see Ohio State for the first time all year try to go tempo. False starts. You see, on DeJuan Jones, on Paris Johnson, you see the personal foul on G. Scott, a dumb one on Cade Stover that, Michigan didn't score on the Stover one, but that
pass interference in the end zone on 3rd and 11.
On 3rd and 11, where Ronnie Hickman, the ball's, whether it's catchable or not, I don't know, but, you just don't have to do it. And 3 times pass interference penalties. Again, I'm not here to talk about officiating. Michigan was handsy, and that's fine. That's the way teams have been allowed to play Ohio State. You have to adjust if you're the Buckeyes, and they just haven't done it. And you just don't you don't get opportunities like this season very often, and now to surrender control of it and have to count on a dozen different things going your way, and to have this be the lasting impression that the playoff selection committee is going to view, that second half is an absolute all-time clunker. I don't know, I can't think of a worse half of football that I've ever seen Ohio State play as a team from top to bottom. I mean, it was, and again, that strictly goes to coaching, 100% coaching.
Yeah, Ryan Day clearly realized that. There's no way around it. I think the mentality and the approach that he's had all year was because he knew what the stakes were going to be today, and he did not meet the moment. There's no other way to say it. The decisions that he made were nonsensical. Bill and I were watching them kick this field goal to cut it to 8 with about 8 minutes to go, and we're like, what is he doing? Does he understand? Like, well, they were inside the 10, right?
Yeah. It was a 27-yard field goal.
You have one of the best offenses in the country. Even if it's been quiet for 15 minutes or so, you have to take your chances with C.J. Stroud, with Marvin Harrison, with Cade Stover, with anybody. Now, they missed him twice when they took shots. Cade Stover wasn't able to come down with a ball in the end zone right over here, and they missed the 4th and 2. That's fine. Ryan Day, the aggressive version of him appears to be long gone. I don't know where it went, but you cannot coach scared in this game, and I thought today he did, and maybe that's an unfair assessment to make because it's hard, and his job is not easy. But if we're going to evaluate it, how else can I say
I don't have a problem with the field goal. You're down 11. It
doesn't do you any good. Like, you're going to have to score a touchdown.
7.5 minutes to go in the game. If you just get a stop, you get the ball back at midfield or close to it, 75-yard touchdown run on the next play. Like, that's inexcusable. Like,
I think they both are. Yeah.
You drove down the field, you got yourself the points you needed, you were in the game, and from that point on, you just get absolutely washed out because Michigan decided to run the ball when you knew they were going to, and you have an 85-yard touchdown run and a 75-yard touchdown run. Obviously, the 85-yard one, the game was over at that point, but it's 3rd and 4. You have them backed up at the 15, and you let an 85-yard touchdown run without getting touched. I mean, that is a team that, again, for whatever reason, just laid down and quit at 5 minutes to go in this game, and I don't understand on the defensive side how that happens when you have.
Yeah, we have enough to get into without arguing that. I just you're going to have to score I'm going to consider a 2-point conversion a touchdown.
Sure.
You're going to have to do it twice anyway. Putting it off for no good reason. I just didn't understand it. But that's one of about 60 things that we can look at. Mayan Williams was not 100%, and Ohio State was much more effective when Chip Trayanum was out there. We saw this for 2 weeks in a row. I applaud the toughness and the willingness to go back out there, but those were wasted touches for Ohio State. Where I don't know where Dallin Hayden disappeared to. He must fumble 1,000 times a day in practice because I don't understand why what he did in the second half of the last 2 games, that he was a non-factor. Like, Ohio State ran the ball fine for the most part. I'm not going to say that that's one of the things that caused it, but I just didn't. There were a lot of things personnel-wise. Went with Josh Fryer for a couple series early, and then pull him. Enoch Vamahi goes in there and trips over his own feet in a pass protection situation. Ohio State's off the field. I'm looking at the personnel decisions, and I've said this from day one this season with the defensive line. It extended to lots and lots of positions on the field where I just don't understand why the decisions were made.
I don't know what it is. I don't know the rationale behind it. And we have 10 minutes of Friday Day. I guess we could have asked about that. We didn't. But yeah, they didn't. Second week in a row, they put themselves in a bad position with personnel decisions. And I just think, to your point, Berm, the field goal, whatever. I guess I can hear that argument. The 4th and 5 punt decision, I don't think it's a make or break play in the game, but I do think it's a microcosm of a larger issue, which is that Ryan Day appears to not have a feel for the game, especially these big games. And I don't know why that is. I felt like when his first year, I felt like that's what he did the best, is kind of, call a dynamite game and light defenses on fire. And now he's lost that touch if he ever had it.
And there's just a stark contrast. Michigan has a 4th and 1 at their own 35-yard line in the third quarter and goes for it.
Didn't think about it. They have a 3rd and 1. They run a creative little, handoff, the halfback pass. Yeah. It's just the stuff, and we talked about that earlier this week. You had to expect that they were going to try some of that stuff.
They didn't do anything that fancy in the second half. They started to run the ball.
They ran JJ a little more.
But you had to know that was coming.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And you just wonder what happened, as you guys are saying, to the aggressive coaching staff that was here. And again, you have drops. Marvin Harrison, Emeka Ibuka drops. Cade Stover, I guess 2 of those have been tough catches, but both of them were catchable balls. It's just missed opportunity after missed opportunity.
Not using Xavier Johnson last week and then putting him out there and setting an emotion so everyone in the defense knows where he's going and then throwing the ball to him. What is that?
That was just my dad used to call that a telegraph.
I don't want this to come up the wrong way because I like Xavier Johnson and I like Chip Trainum ran really well today. Chip Trainum was a linebacker 4 weeks ago, and Xavier Johnson is a walk-on who's a heck of a football player. I don't think those 2 guys should be like the most important people in your game plan when you get on field like this when you have the talent that Ohio State has.
Yeah, I mean, today is maybe the clearest example that this, whether that was Ryan Day or Brian Hartline or whoever else, that this team never recovered from losing Jackson Smith and Jigba in the opener. And they never even tried with the true freshman wide receivers. They put a lot on Marvin Harrison's shoulders, and that made it even easier, I think, in some respects for defenses to try and take him out. You had to work really hard to scheme him up, get him open, rely on him to beat double coverage or make ridiculous catches, and that's not a sustainable plan. Emeka Ibuka is very good. Julian Fleming did great work over the course of the season. Not perfect, but there just wasn't anything really top-notch elite beyond that. And lots of programs are, if you lose Jackson Smith and Jigba, you're not going to sustain it as well as Ohio State even did. But I thought that their creativity lack of creativity was exposed today in that regard. And in August, we're talking about a team that was going to rely on Travion Henderson as a Heisman Trophy candidate and Jackson Smith and Jigba as the Biletnikoff favorite. And then neither one were available for this game. And it was
most of the season for Travion.
Yeah, and it was like the roof caved in. And the roof did cave in on top of the secondary. Talk about things that go back to week 1. I felt like statistically it didn't match up with what my eyes were saying all year. Like they were a better pass defense than it seemed to me. But the eye test and the numbers test were both flunked today. And
Michigan had 21 yards of completion. I mean,
JJ was 12 of 24.
Right. I mean, it wasn't like
he can't even make good throws. That's still true. He did not make good throws today.
Well, I mean, you have the long pass interference down the middle that Ransom, all he has to do is turn around, and it's not a PI. You have the one on Hickman in the end zone, which on the 3rd and 11, where you get off the field there with the field goal, and who knows what happens. It's just a lot of little things that you look at and go, something was just not right. From the minute those guys walked out of the tunnel in the second half, it was just something didn't click, and I don't.
It's really weird because the start was good, and I thought I was on alert for they're going to be too emotional. This is going to be a bad start. Someone's going to do something stupid. That didn't really happen. Well, it happened later in the game, but their start was everything you wanted it to be. And then it was a touchdown field goal, and then back-to-back drives where they stalled out, and all of a sudden it's 10-3, and that big play down the sideline happens, and it's a game.
It's obviously. You now require a lot of things to happen. C.J. Stroud talked in post-game about whether or not this was his last game at Ohio State. Obviously didn't say anything directly, but we all know that this was the last game he's going to play in this stadium. I want to say that I appreciate how blunt he was about saying he had to be better, even though I don't think this was really on him. One of the things for me, when you are a team like Ohio State and you lose once every 15 games, like I think it's impressive to see who steps up and talks and who. Yeah. JT Tuimoloau didn't say much, but
he doesn't normally anyway.
To be the guy to stand up there and take the heat, I appreciate that about him. CJ Stroud, you can tell me, he started to get a little emotional at times, and it wasn't about the loss. It was about this being the last time he was here, and whatever happens with him moving forward, I feel like people are going to have a tainted view of him forever because he didn't beat Michigan, and that's unfortunate. But like these guys, you saw that emotion, and they were hurt, and obviously they know everyone watching this is hurt as well. But that's what happens in this game, and the rivalry is back. Like if there was any doubt that last year was an aberration or that last year was an anomaly, like it is not. The game is back, the rivalry is back, and Ryan Day, is going to be putting himself and seeing himself in a position next November where if Ohio State walks into Ann Arbor with a first-time starter at quarterback and he doesn't win that game, you have major problems. And so, CJ said this one game doesn't define the program, but it kind of does.
It's also 2 games.
Right, because now it's not just one game.
But they chose this, right? I mean, we didn't say this is going to define it for you. They did. They said there are 3 goals, and the only one that matters is beating Michigan, and then you can do everything after that. Well, if that's the standard that you're setting for yourself, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
They did. And they have failed it twice in a row. Ryan Day was a lot more blunt about it last year, that he just outright called it a failure and then went into, his mode of trying to get it fixed and had to make sweeping changes. I don't know what those are going to be like. I'm not considering outright chaos a possibility for Ohio State to get into the playoff. I don't think that they deserve to be in. I said that from the start. I'm not going to change my mind about that. There may well be a scenario that gets them in. I don't think they should be there. They don't win the Big Ten. Don't beat Michigan 2 years in a row. I don't see why they would deserve a spot. Could they play? Hey, it'd be fun. Ohio State and Georgia in the Peach Bowl. That might be a really great game. I don't think Ohio State has earned it. By their own standard, they should not be there. They didn't accomplish the first goal. And so what does Ryan Day do to fix that now? I don't know. I think that there's clearly a change that has to be made on the defensive coaching staff, not Jim Knowles, a position coach move that's been overdue probably for a year. And some of those issues I think were clear today yet again that have existed all year, and certainly were exposed by a mobile quarterback and a rotation that doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to dwell on that. But
the biggest change has to be in Ryan Day's own philosophy, which is something I don't think we would have anticipated saying a year ago. And now he has to figure out, is he Ryan Day of 2019 or is he this? And that is the challenge, because you don't want to be a coach that's constantly playing with emotion all the time. Like, you need to stop and think, okay, is it smart to go for it on 4th and 5 from the 49 or 43-yard line in this game? It's one of those weird things, and Bobby Carpenter talked about it earlier this week on Weekend Kickoff or on Roosters. I don't remember, all these days have run together.
Yeah.
This is the game Jim Tressel would have gone for it on 4th and 5.
Yep.
This is the game Urban Meyer would have gone for it. And something has just compelled Ryan Day to say, let's go a little slower.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is absolutely counter to what he does best. And I imagine that some of the fixes, some of the changes that he's going to have to try to find are just some soul searching on how he wants to run this program.
There's going to have to be some tough conversations about who calls the plays next year. I used to think he was a very good play caller, and I think he has lost that touch. I don't know if that's everything else that comes with being a head coach, clouding your vision or not giving you the time you need to have the clarity to call the plays on a Saturday, which is perfectly understandable. It's why a lot of head coaches don't call plays.
Yeah.
But it's not working. And I don't know, if it's handed the reins to Kevin Wilson, or I don't even know if you bring somebody in or Justin Fry or what, but I just don't think that dynamic's working right now.
A lot of them aren't.
Yeah.
And the last 6 weeks of this season has not been good. Ohio State went into the off week as the hottest team in the country, the most complete team in the country, and came out of it completely disjointed and never got back on track. And I'd love to know what happened in that week, because they just seemed to lose a lot of what they had going in that off week.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've lost the game for the second year in a row, 45-23. These have been snap judgments in the horseshoe. Don't know what's coming next, really, for Ohio State, but I know it won't be a Big Ten championship game. We will be breaking this down further at ohiostate.rivals.com, and, of course, on the podcast as we move forward. No game next week. Possibility. There's definitely going to be a Rose Bowl at worst. Maybe that's at best, too. I don't know. We'll figure that out in about a week's time, plus a day, and see if there's other chaos that changes that destination for Ohio State. I wouldn't count on it. But that's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. This has been Snap Judgments. Thanks for following along with us all regular season long. We will see you again on Monday.